A Hispanic boy from a low-income housing unit claiming his mother's a renowned neurosurgeon. That was the most outlandish tale Mr. David Miller had heard in his 15 years of teaching. Mr. Miller didn't just think it, he declared it to the entire 5th grade class at Northwood Elementary. He then snatched Leo Martinez's meticulously crafted essay from his desk and tore it cleanly in two. The ripping sound cut through the quiet classroom. He tore it again, and then once more. The fragments drifted down like confetti onto Leo's scuffed-up sneakers. "We don't invent fantasies to feel important, Leo. Famous surgeons reside in mansions. Their children attend elite academies. They own luxury vehicles." His tone grew sharper. "They certainly do not appear, well, like you." 11-year-old Leo stood there, stunned into silence. His hands began to tremble. Every student in the classroom stared. Mr. Miller crumpled the pieces and tossed them into the recycling bin. "Preposterous! Have you ever witnessed a teacher dismantle a child for being poor and telling the truth?" 2 hours prior, Leo Martinez had woken to his mother's voice from the other room. "Breakfast in 10, kiddo." The Martinez family lived in a simple 2-bedroom apartment in East San Jose, California, close enough to the regional hospital that you could hear the ambulance sirens if the windows were open. The furniture was functional but secondhand. The walls were decorated with family pictures, but nothing that indicated a medical profession. No white coats hung on the hooks, no framed diplomas, no medical diagrams. Professional discretion. Dr. Isabella Martinez didn't broadcast her profession. In the small kitchen, Leo found his mom at the table in jeans and a Stanford hoodie. To an observer, she looked like any other parent, perhaps a graduate student or a local librarian. His father, Marco Martinez, was pouring coffee in his construction work boots. He had an early start at a site downtown. On the refrigerator, a child's drawing depicted a stick figure in a white coat with a stethoscope. Beside it, a calendar had today's date circled in blue. Career Day, Friday. Leo couldn't contain his excitement. He'd been anticipating this for a month. "Mom, can I tell them about the time you operated on the governor's wife?" Dr. Martinez exchanged a look with her husband. Marco gave her a subtle nod. The one that communicated their son had a right to be proud. "Leo, you know the rules. Patient privacy is crucial, but everyone else gets to share about their parents." "I know, son." Isabella's voice was soft but clear. "Our family lives differently. We maintain a low profile. You get that, right?" Leo nodded, though he didn't entirely grasp it. Why did other kids get to boast while he had to remain silent? Marco squeezed his wife's hand. "He deserves to be proud of you, Isa." "I know." The surgeon looked at her son. "Just keep it straightforward today, okay? You have nothing to prove to anyone." Leo finished his toast and went to get ready for school. He was unaware that in a few hours, straightforward would become utterly complex. Northwood Elementary was situated in the diverse heart of East San Jose. The school was a melting pot. Children of tech workers from Silicon Valley. Kids whose parents worked in the vast agricultural fields. Immigrant families pursuing a new beginning. Working-class children whose parents built the very offices where tech fortunes were made. It was meant to be a place where every child was valued equally. But Mr. David Miller had taught there for 15 years, and in those 15 years, he had formed a rigid opinion of who was credible and who was fabricating stories. His classroom walls featured the California state flag, pictures of him with city officials, and various teaching awards. He wore a proud educator pin daily. And he'd never set foot in a surgical suite, never worked outside the familiar confines of a public school. But he was certain he knew what a surgeon's family looked like. And Leo Martinez did not fit his preconceived notion. During the morning announcements, Principal Thompson's voice came over the speaker. "Good morning, Northwood. A reminder that today is Parent Career Day. We are thrilled to welcome some very special guests. Please show them our Northwood hospitality. In Mr. Miller's classroom, the atmosphere buzzed. Chloe Johnson, a girl whose mother was a software engineer at a major tech company, raised her hand. "Mr. Miller, my mom is leading a team developing a new app that's going to launch next quarter." "How wonderful, Chloe." His face beamed. "Innovation is what drives our community forward." Miguel Garcia, a boy whose father was a landscaper, raised his hand next. "My dad works at that tech campus, too. He plants all the trees and flowers." "That's great, Miguel." Mr. Miller's smile was fleeting. "Now let's turn to our journals." Leo observed the interaction. He recognized the pattern. Some children were celebrated, while others were acknowledged with a polite nod. It often seemed to correlate with their parents' income. At 10 a.m., Mr. Miller gave the assignment. "Class, I want you to write a short piece about your parents' career. What is their job? Why is it significant? How does it contribute to our society?" He moved between the rows of desks. "Let's have these done before our guests start arriving. Best work, everyone." The students began writing. Leo took out his pen and wrote in his neatest cursive. "My mom is a neurosurgeon at the Regional Medical Center. She has been a doctor for 20 years, helping people with brain and spine injuries. She makes life or death decisions to help people heal. There are very few female neurosurgeons in the country. My mom started as a resident and worked incredibly hard. She says that medicine is about serving humanity, not about personal glory. My mom is often on call for emergencies. Sometimes I don't see her for a whole day, but she does it because she cares about her patients. That's why her job is significant." His best friend, Sam, leaned over. "Dude, is your mom for real a brain surgeon?" Leo nodded, whispering back. "Yeah, she just doesn't make a big deal about it." "That's awesome. My mom just works at the post office." "My mom says every job is important," Leo whispered. "Your mom makes sure people get their important letters and packages. That's a big deal." Sam smiled. Mr. Miller's presence loomed over Leo's desk. His shadow darkened the page. He leaned in, reading the essay. His mouth tightened into a firm line. Leo's stomach churned. The look on his face screamed disbelief, but he said nothing. Not then. He just returned to his desk and jotted something in his notebook. As the morning progressed, Leo's watch vibrated. It was a simple smartwatch his parents used to contact him. He checked it on his way to the library. A message from his dad. "Mom's emergency surgery just finished. A bad car accident. She's heading to the school now. We'll be there by 11:30. Keep it a surprise." Leo's spirits soared. His mom had been at the hospital since before dawn. He had thought she wouldn't make it, but she was coming. He wanted to tell everyone. Instead, he put his watch back on and returned to class. He didn't see Mr. Miller observing him, didn't catch the dismissive glance. He had already decided what he thought of Leo Martinez. That boy was a storyteller. And today, in front of everybody, he was going to teach him a lesson about the truth. What he didn't realize was that in less than an hour, a renowned neurosurgeon would enter his classroom, and his entire perception of Leo Martinez would be irrevocably altered. The next morning's arrival at Northwood Elementary was filled with a palpable buzz. Parents started to arrive in Mr. Miller's classroom at 11 a.m. There was a programmer in a company fleece, a firefighter in uniform, a graphic designer with a portfolio, a chef, and a dental hygienist. Mr. Miller welcomed them with a spectrum of enthusiasm. The programmer received a warm handshake. The chef, a courteous greeting. The hygienist, a quick, "Thanks for coming," before he turned his attention elsewhere. Leo sat at his desk, glancing at the clock every few minutes. His mom had texted at 10:45. Parking. See you in a few. Love you. Just a little longer. Leo just had to get through the next few minutes. Class, Mr. Miller said, clapping his hands. Before our guests begin, let's share the essays you wrote. I'd like our visitors to hear your thoughtful words about their professions. One by one, students read their work. Chloe Johnson described her mother's role at the tech giant. Mr. Miller was visibly impressed. Miguel Garcia spoke of his father's landscaping work and his pride in making the city beautiful. Mr. Miller offered a brief, tight-lipped smile and moved on. Then, he called on Leo. Leo Martinez, you're up. Leo stood, his paper trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and began to read. My mom is a neurosurgeon at the Regional Medical Center. She has been a doctor for 20 years, helping people with brain and spine injuries. She makes life-or-death decisions to help people heal. Mr. Miller's face hardened. There are very few female neurosurgeons in the country. My mom started as a resident and worked incredibly hard. She says that medicine is about serving humanity, not about personal glory. That's enough. The words sliced through the air. Every student froze. The visiting parents looked up. Mr. Miller rose from his chair. Leo, please come to the front. Leo walked forward, his legs feeling unsteady. His heart pounded. Class, Mr. Miller began, adopting a lecturing tone. This provides a perfect illustration of what we call exaggeration. Leo, I'm going to need you to tell the class the truth now. What is it your mother really does? She's a surgeon, sir. His eyes narrowed. Leo, I have been an educator for 15 years. I know surgeons. I have taught their children. He folded his arms. Renowned surgeons do not live in the Vista Heights apartments. Their children do not come to a public school in worn-out shoes. Their families are prominent members of the community. There are public records, galas, news articles. Leo felt a flush of heat creep up his neck. But sir, my mom doesn't like the attention because of what? Fictional high-stakes operations? His voice was thick with sarcasm. A few students snickered. Chloe Johnson raised her hand. Mr. Miller, maybe his mom really is. Chloe, while I appreciate your compassion, this is a teachable moment. He refocused on Leo. I checked the school's records this morning. Your mother's occupation is listed as healthcare professional. That is a world away from a renowned neurosurgeon. Wouldn't you agree? Leo's eyes welled up. She puts that on forms for privacy reasons. She told me, enough. The classroom flinched at his sharp tone. You will sit down. You will rewrite this essay with the actual facts, and you will apologize to the class and our guests for taking up their time with your fabrications. Am I clear? Tears streamed down Leo's face, but he stood his ground. Leo, I told you to sit down. My mom didn't raise me to lie, sir. The room fell utterly silent. Mr. Miller's face turned a shade of crimson. Several parents exchanged uneasy glances. What did you say to me? My mom is a surgeon. She had an emergency this morning. She'll be here any minute. You'll see. Mr. Miller's jaw was set. To the principal's office, now. Sam stood up. But Mr. Miller, Leo's not lying. I've seen... Sam, sit down before you go with him. Sam reluctantly sat, giving Leo a look of support. Leo picked up his backpack. As he headed for the door, Mr. Miller delivered his final, crushing remark, loud enough for all to hear. Class, let this serve as a lesson. Truthfulness and modesty are qualities we value. Pretending to be someone you're not, especially when you come from a certain background, is a sign of poor character. Leo paused at the doorway, his hands clenching the straps of his backpack. Every person in the room watched him leave. He had about 15 minutes until his mother was supposed to arrive. 15 minutes to endure being branded a liar. He had no inkling that Mr. Miller was on the verge of having the most mortifying day of his teaching career. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. Leo walked toward the principal's office, the squeak of his sneakers echoing on the linoleum. Behind him, he could hear Mr. Miller's voice carrying on with the career day presentations, as if he hadn't just humiliated a child in front of his peers. He checked his watch. No new messages, probably looking for parking. Leo considered messaging her, telling her what had just transpired. But how would he explain it? That his teacher had called him a liar? That no one believed him? His mom had just come from a stressful surgery. Leo didn't want to add to her worries. He put his watch back on and continued walking. Through the office window, Leo saw Principal Thompson on the phone, nodding with a serious expression. She glanced at a file on her desk. Then her eyes met Leo's through the glass. Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition. But she was in the middle of a conversation. She gave a small, quick nod and went back to her call. Leo wondered if Mr. Miller had already reported him. The meeting was handled by Vice Principal Evans. Principal Thompson was still on her call, her office door shut. Mr. Evans was a man in his late 40s who had been at Northwood for a decade. He wore slacks and a polo shirt with the school's emblem. He had a perpetually weary expression. "Have a seat, Leo." Leo sat in the chair opposite Mr. Evans's desk. It was too large for him. His feet dangled above the floor. "So," Mr. Evans began, opening a file. "Mr. Miller says you were being disruptive and refused to correct inaccurate information on your assignment." "Sir, it wasn't inaccurate. My mom really is a—" Mr. Evans held up a hand. "I have your records here. Your mother is listed as Isabella Martinez, occupation healthcare professional. That's our official information." "That's what she writes on forms, sir, for privacy." "Privacy." Mr. Evans let out a small, indulgent laugh. Not a mean one, but the kind an adult uses with an imaginative child. "Leo, I can understand wanting your mother to have an important job. Many kids feel that way. But inventing these grand stories about surgeons and emergencies— I'm not inventing it." Leo's voice was firmer than he intended. Mr. Evans' demeanor stiffened. "Watch your tone. You're in enough trouble as it is, son." Leo's watch buzzed. He looked at it quickly. A text from his mom. "At the front office. Where are you?" Leo's heart leaped. He showed his watch to Mr. Evans. "See, she's here. She's in the office right now." Mr. Evans gave the screen a cursory glance. "Leo, I can't confirm anything from a text. Anyone can be saved as Mom in your contacts. Now, this is what's going to happen." Mr. Evans leaned in. "You will go back to your classroom. You will apologize to Mr. Miller for being disrespectful. You will rewrite that essay with the correct information, and we will put this behind us. Is that understood?" Leo felt his hands start to shake again. "You don't believe me?" "I believe you're seeking attention, Leo. I get it. Kids from families where parents have to work long hours sometimes create these narratives to feel significant. It's a way of asking for help." "My parents are married. My dad's a construction foreman. My mom—" "That's enough," Mr. Evans said, standing. "Go back to class now, or I will have to call your parents for a formal disciplinary meeting, and believe me, you do not want that on your permanent record." Leo stood up slowly, his eyes blurring with tears he fought to hold back. "My mother saves lives, sir. She's operated for 12 hours straight. She deserves to be believed." Mr. Evans' expression softened, but only for a moment. "Back to class, Leo." When Leo re-entered room 204, the scene had changed. Parents were now seated around the classroom. Career day was in full swing. Mr. Miller was at the front, introducing Mrs. Johnson. "We are so fortunate to have these accomplished professionals with us. Mrs. Johnson is at the forefront of technological innovation in Silicon Valley. Let's give her our undivided attention." A polite applause followed. Leo slipped into his seat. Sam leaned over. "You good?" Before Leo could respond, Mr. Miller's voice sliced through the room. "Leo, is there something you'd like to say to the class?" Every head turned. Students, parents, everyone was looking at him. "Sir?" "Your apology." Leo's stomach plummeted. The room was silent. This was no longer just his classmates. There were other adults here, successful people, watching him be shamed. An 11-year-old Hispanic boy being coerced into apologizing for telling the truth. I have nothing to apologize for, sir." A collective gasp went through the room. Parents exchanged glances. Some appeared uncomfortable. Others looked at Leo as if he were being insolent. Mr. Miller's jaw clenched. "I beg your pardon? In front of our esteemed guests, you are going to persist with this defiance?" Chloe's mother, Mrs. Johnson, a sharp woman in a business suit, spoke up. "Perhaps we should hear the boy out." "I appreciate your input, Mrs. Johnson, but this is a matter of classroom discipline." Mr. Miller's smile was professionally courteous, but his eyes were like ice. He turned back to Leo. "You have two options, son. You can apologize this instant and rewrite your essay with the truth, or you can spend the rest of career day in the office while your peers learn from our guests. What's it going to be?" Leo's voice was barely a whisper. "When my mom gets here." "Your mother is not coming, Leo." The words landed like a physical blow. Parents fidgeted. Some students looked down. Mr. Miller continued, his voice adopting a tone of strained patience. "Son, I know this is difficult, but the reality is your mother likely works in a clinic or a support role at the hospital. Those are very honorable jobs." He moved closer to Leo's desk. "But you've concocted this fantasy about being a top surgeon because you're ashamed. I understand. You see Chloe's mom creating new technology, and you want your family to sound equally impressive." His voice lowered, becoming more insidious. "But Leo, there's no dishonor in being ordinary. The dishonor is in dishonesty, especially when you come from a community that already contends with stereotypes about truthfulness." "Mr. Miller," Mrs. Johnson stood again. "I really must insist. Please, Mrs. Johnson, sit down." The programmer sat, her expression clearly disturbed. Sam muttered, "This is not right." "What was that, Sam?" "Nothing, sir." "Sam, I heard you. Office, now." "But I didn't." "Now." Sam grabbed his bag and walked out, giving Leo a final, supportive glance. Leo was now completely alone, isolated in a room full of people. Mr. Miller stood over him, arms crossed, waiting. The other parents averted their gaze, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge the teacher's authority. The clock on the wall read 11:28 a.m. His mother was supposed to be here by now. In this moment, Leo Martinez had never felt so small. He looked down at his desk, at the blank space where his essay should have been. His hands gripped the sides of his desk. And then he did something that took everyone by surprise, himself included. He stood up. "Sir," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "My name is Leo Martinez. My mother is Dr. Isabella Martinez. She's a neurosurgeon. She saved hundreds of lives, and when she gets here, you will be the one who owes an apology." Mr. Miller's face flushed a deep, angry red. "Sit down." "No, sir." The room was holding its breath. "Leo Martinez, if you do not sit..." The classroom door opened. Principal Thompson stepped in, looking slightly flustered. "Mr. Miller, I need to see you in the hallway, immediately." The urgency in her voice was unmistakable. Mr. Miller blinked, taken aback. "Principal Thompson, I'm in the middle of..." "Now, David." Every parent registered the use of his first name. That was not a good sign. "Watam." Miller followed her into the hall, the door clicking shut behind them. Through the small window in the door, the class could see them talking. Principal Thompson's face was stern. Mr. Miller's expression went from annoyed to confused to something that looked a lot like panic. Leo sat back down, his heart racing. Whatever was happening, it was about him. The clock ticked to 11:30 a.m. In the hallway, Principal Thompson's voice was low and tense. "David, we have a guest." Mr. Miller crossed his arms. "If this is about Leo Martinez, I was simply upholding academic integrity. The boy was... I just spent 10 minutes on the phone with the chief of staff at the regional medical center." The words hung in the air. Mr. Miller stared at her. "The chief of staff?" "Yes. They called because a distinguished member of their surgical team was running late for career day and was having trouble finding parking." Principal Thompson held up her tablet, showing him an email. "They needed to confirm our visitor protocols and if we had a reserved spot for Dr. Isabella Martinez." Mr. Miller's face turned ashen. "Dr. Martinez? For career day? For Leo Martinez's mother?" The hallway felt like it was tilting. Leo Martinez." "Yes, David. The 11-year-old boy you just publicly humiliated for supposedly lying about his mother being a neurosurgeon." "Oh my God. The boy you sent to the office? The boy whose essay you tore up? The boy you accused of fabricating stories because of where he lives and how he looks?" Mr. Miller put a hand to his forehead. I just assumed he was exaggerating. He lives in that apartment complex. The mother isn't on any of the society pages. There was no... Because world-renowned surgeons often maintain their privacy for security and personal reasons." Principal Thompson had never raised her voice to a teacher in her entire career, but she was now. "I have spent the last 10 minutes with a very gracious but very direct Dr. Martinez, explaining why her son was accused of being a liar for telling the truth about his mother's profession. Do you have any idea of the damage you have done?" Through the hallway window, they could see a woman walking toward them. She was of medium height, with a calm, composed demeanor, and she was wearing blue surgical scrubs under a white coat. Dr. Isabella Martinez had arrived. Mr. Miller felt a wave of nausea. "She's real." "Yes, David, she's real. And right now she is walking into my school to see the son you just broke." Inside the classroom, students and parents had noticed the hushed but intense conversation in the hallway. "Who is that?" one of the kids whispered. "Look at her coat." Mrs. Johnson, the programmer, moved closer to the window. Her eyes widened. That's Dr. Martinez. She's a leading neurosurgeon. She was featured in a tech journal for her work with robotic surgery." The room filled with murmurs. Leo sat frozen, watching through the window as his mother approached, her face a mixture of concern and determination. She was here. Everyone was about to see the truth. Dr. Isabella Martinez entered Northwood Elementary with a quiet authority. She had just spent 10 hours in surgery, but her focus was now entirely on her son. Principal Thompson met her in the main hallway. "Dr. Martinez, again, I am so deeply sorry." She shook the principal's hand. "Principal Thompson, thank you for your time. I'm just here for career day. I apologize for being late." Her voice was calm and professional, but there was an unmistakable firmness beneath it. "I understand there was an issue with my son's assignment." Behind the principal, Mr. Miller stood, his face pale. Dr. Martinez's gaze shifted to him, not with anger, but with a surgeon's precision. "You must be Leo's teacher." Yes, ma'am. Mr. Miller. Doctor, I want to apologize. There was a terrible misunderstanding?" Her tone was level. It didn't need to be loud to be powerful. "My son was called a liar in front of his classmates for stating my profession. Please, explain the misunderstanding." "Ma'am, I didn't know. I had no way of confirming." "You didn't confirm," she stated, letting the words settle. "You made an assumption." Mr. Miller had nothing to say. Dr. Martinez continued, her voice steady but sharp. Sir, I have spent 2 decades in a field dominated by men. I have learned that assumptions based on appearance, on someone's address, or on what you believe they should be, those assumptions are almost always wrong, and they are always harmful. She adjusted the stethoscope around her neck. I have operated on patients with life-threatening conditions. I have advised international medical boards. I have mentored dozens of young surgeons. But at this moment, the only thing that matters is my 11-year-old son who was shamed for being proud of his mother. Her eyes were locked on his. Where is my son? The classroom door opened. Principal Thompson entered, her professional composure barely masking her stress. Class, we have another very special guest who was able to join us. Mr. Miller followed, looking ill. Then, Dr. Isabella Martinez walked in. The effect was electric. The room went utterly silent. Every parent in the room stood up instinctively. Mrs. Johnson, who worked with CEOs, looked on with deep respect. The firefighter, who faced danger daily, recognized a different kind of hero. The families in the room who used the regional hospital knew exactly who she was. 4 words were whispered from the back. That's the Dr. Martinez. Leo saw his mother, and the dam of emotions he'd been holding back burst. Mom! His voice was a small, choked whisper of relief. Dr. Martinez's professional facade melted away. Her eyes found her son, his face tear-streaked and weary. She crossed the room in a few quick steps, ignoring everyone else. She knelt down to Leo's level, right there in the middle of the classroom, and wrapped him in a hug. I'm here, Leo. I'm here. I'm so sorry I was late. Leo buried his head in his mother's shoulder and sobbed. Not from sadness anymore, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, of his truth finally being validated. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but in that time, every person in the room understood the gravity of what had happened that morning. A child had told the truth and had been torn down for it. Dr. Martinez stood, keeping Leo's hand in hers. She faced the class. Good morning, I'm Dr. Isabella Martinez. I'm a neurosurgeon. I apologize for interrupting your career day, but I made a promise to my son that I would be here, and I always keep my promises to my son. Her voice was composed, but each word resonated. She glanced at Mr. Miller, who was standing by his desk, looking as though he wished the floor would swallow him. Sir, I believe there was a question about Leo's essay. The room was still. Mr. Miller opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Principal Thompson intervened. Dr. Martinez, please, we would be honored if you would speak to the students about your career. She gave a single nod. Thank you. She turned back to the class, Leo still by her side. My son wrote that I am a neurosurgeon who has been practicing for 20 years. That is correct. I perform surgery on the brain and spinal cord at the Regional Medical Center. I also conduct research to find new ways to treat neurological diseases. The students listened, mesmerized. Leo also wrote that medicine is about serving humanity. He learned that by watching his father, Marco, a construction foreman, build schools and hospitals for our community. He learned it by moving 3 times for my residency and fellowship, by changing schools, by spending nights with his grandparents because I was on call for a medical emergency. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the students. My son did not exaggerate. If anything, he understated the reality. The sacrifices that the families of medical professionals make are often more difficult than what he described. Her eyes found Mr. Miller. When a child shares their truth with you, especially a truth that might be outside your own experience, your first responsibility is to listen, not to judge them because their reality challenges your assumptions. The room was completely quiet. Mr. Miller's voice was barely audible. Dr. Martinez, I owe Leo an apology A sincere one. He turned to face Leo, tears welling in his own eyes. Leo, I was wrong. Utterly and completely wrong. I made assumptions about you and your family based on things that have nothing to do with who you are. I judged you. I refused to listen. I refused to believe you, and I caused you harm. His voice cracked. You deserved better from me. You deserved to be believed. I am so very sorry. Leo looked at his mother, who gave him a gentle squeeze of the hand. It's your decision, son. Leo took a breath. Mr. Miller, my mom says that everyone makes mistakes. She says what's important is what you do after you make them. The maturity in his words, coming from an 11-year-old who had been so publicly shamed just an hour before, resonated with everyone in the room. Maybe you could just believe kids more, even when their stories seem too big to be true. I will, Leo. Mr. Miller wiped his eyes. I promise I will. Sam was brought back from the office. Dr. Martinez shook his hand and thanked him for being a good friend to Leo. Chloe Johnson came up to Leo afterward. I'm sorry I didn't push back harder. What you did was really brave. Other students crowded around Leo, not with pity, but with a newfound respect. Mrs. Johnson, the programmer, approached Dr. Martinez. Doctor, I work with some of the most brilliant minds in tech. What you said about listening first, I needed to hear that today, too. Mr. Garcia, the landscaper, shook the doctor's hand. Thank you for what you said about service. Every kind of service. Principal Thompson addressed the class. Effective immediately, Northwood Elementary will be instituting mandatory, comprehensive implicit bias training for all faculty and staff. What happened here today will never happen again. Mr. Miller nodded, his hand on his heart. I will be the first one to enroll. The doctor then did something remarkable. From her bag, she pulled out a small lapel pin, one given to her team for a particularly groundbreaking surgical success. She handed it to Mr. Miller. I am not giving you this for what happened this morning, sir. I am giving it to you for your apology. That required courage. Use it as a reminder that we grow from our errors, not from our achievements. Mr. Miller held the pin, nodding, unable to form words. For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Martinez gave a presentation about neuroscience, medicine, and service. She answered questions from the captivated students. She shared stories they could understand. She made every child feel seen. At the end, Principal Thompson suggested a class photo. The students gathered around the doctor. Leo stood right beside her, holding her hand, a wide, genuine smile on his face. That picture would circulate on community forums and social media for weeks. But in that moment, it was just a son standing with his mother. Finally believed, finally seen, finally and fully proud. That evening, the Martinez family sat in their simple San Jose apartment, the very home Mr. Miller had judged as evidence of Leo's fabrication. Marco Martinez had come home from the construction site as soon as Isabella called him. Now he sat on the couch with Leo leaning against him, still in his work clothes. Dr. Martinez sat across from them, having finally changed out of her scrubs into a comfortable sweatshirt. How are you doing, champ? Marco asked, ruffling Leo's hair. Tired, Leo admitted. But, okay, I think. What did you learn today? His mother asked gently. Leo considered it. His parents always encouraged him to find the lesson in every experience. I learned that telling the truth can be really difficult, especially when people have already decided not to believe you. But you have to do it anyway. Isabella nodded. What else? That what people think about you on the outside can be completely wrong, but that doesn't mean you should change who you are to fit their expectations. Marco pulled him into a side hug. That's my boy. That's exactly right. But Mom... Leo looked at her. Yeah, honey. Why didn't you just put neurosurgeon on the school forms? Then none of this would have happened. It was a valid question, one Isabella had been pondering all afternoon. She leaned forward. Leo, your value has nothing to do with my job title. You are important because of who you are. You're kind, you are honest, and you showed incredible courage today. I never want you to feel like you need my accomplishments for you to matter. She paused. But I also see now that my desire for privacy put you in an unfair and impossible situation. You should never have had to carry that burden alone. So what happens now? Now, she said, a determined look in her eyes. We make sure this never happens to another child at Northwood Elementary, or anywhere else. 3 months passed. Northwood Elementary was a different place. Not the building itself, but its heart had changed. Every single staff member had completed a rigorous implicit bias training program. It wasn't suggested. Principal Thompson made it a condition of employment. The training addressed racial bias, class bias, and the peril of assumptions, using real-world scenarios to force uncomfortable but necessary conversations. Mr. David Miller was at every session. He didn't just attend, he became a vocal advocate. At a staff meeting 2 months after the incident, he stood before his peers. 3 months ago, I hurt a child because I was blinded by my own prejudice. I looked at Leo Martinez and decided his reality was impossible because it didn't fit the narrow picture I had in my mind of what a surgeon's family was supposed to look like. His voice was steady, filled with a new humility. I've spent the last few months confronting my biases, the ones I didn't even realize were there. I've learned that my teacher's instinct was often just prejudice disguised as experience. He held up the lapel pin Dr. Martinez had given him. I keep this on my desk, not as a prize, but as a reminder that growth comes from our mistakes, not our successes. The training resulted in tangible policy shifts. A new protocol was established. Verify, don't vilify. If a student's claim about their family seemed out of the ordinary, the first step was a respectful conversation with a parent, not a confrontation with the child. The student body, moved by Leo's story, launched the Hear Our Stories initiative, a peer-led group where students could share experiences of feeling unheard or judged. Leo was a key member. Mr. Miller's classroom transformed. The first day back after the incident, he and his students collaboratively wrote a new classroom creed. It was now displayed prominently on the wall. In this room, we listen with open hearts. We ask questions with respect. We never assume a person's story is untrue because it's different from our own. Every voice matters. Every student signed it, with Leo's signature bold and clear at the bottom. Mr. Miller also introduced a family spotlight circle each month where students could share stories about their families without fear of judgment. The purpose wasn't comparison, but connection and understanding. During one circle, Miguel Garcia talked about how his father, the landscaper, could identify any plant by its leaf, and how he was teaching him to care for the earth. Mr. Miller listened with a newfound respect, hearing the dignity in the work. Chloe Johnson surprised everyone by admitting that her mom's tech job sometimes felt less important after meeting Dr. Martinez, and that she was now thinking more about careers that directly helped people. And Leo, he spoke about medical families, about the long hours, the missed holidays, and the quiet sacrifices they make. The class listened, truly listened. That was the biggest change. The listening. The photo of Dr. Martinez in her scrubs, kneeling to hug her tearful 11-year-old son, spread like wildfire through local online communities. The accompanying story told it all. How a teacher had called a Hispanic student a liar for being proud of his mother. How his essay was destroyed. How he was publicly shamed. And how a renowned surgeon walked into that classroom to stand with her son. Local news outlets featured the story. Social media buzzed with commentary. Some focused on the issue of classism, others on racial bias, and many on the immense courage it took for Leo to hold his ground. But what resonated most deeply was Mr. Miller's apology and the school's commitment to change. People were tired of stories where the wrongdoer was simply punished. This was a story about the possibility of redemption. 3 months later, Mr. Miller was invited to co-present at a regional education summit on combating bias in the classroom. He accepted, but always began his portion with the same words. "I am not the hero of this story. I am the lesson. But I am also proof that it's never too late to unlearn our biases and do better." Leo today is different from the frightened 11-year-old who stood alone in that classroom. He's more self-assured, still kind and humble, but no longer hesitant to speak his truth. He started a mentorship program at Northwood where older kids help younger students find their voice. The program's motto? Listen first. Always. His friendship with Sam is stronger than ever. Chloe Johnson is now a regular at their lunch table. Even Miguel Garcia is part of their group. They call themselves the Story Keepers. Kids dedicated to honoring each other's experiences without judgment. Dr. Martinez attends school functions whenever her demanding schedule permits, not in a white coat, but simply as Leo's mom. She wants her son to know her pride in him is for who he is, not what she does. Marco Martinez continues to build the city, but he makes a point to volunteer at the school's career days, showing students that building a community with your hands is a service of immense value. The Martinez family returned to their quiet, private life. But Northwood Elementary, and everyone who heard Leo's story, was changed for the better. Sometimes, the most courageous act is to simply stand in your truth, especially when the world insists you are wrong. Leo Martinez's story is one child's experience in one classroom in San Jose, California. But it reflects a much broader issue occurring in schools all across America every day. Right now, a child is being told their reality is invalid because it doesn't fit an adult's expectations. A student of color is being scrutinized more intensely than their white peers. A child from a working-class background is being dismissed as a dreamer. An immigrant's child is being misunderstood because their family's story doesn't fit a familiar narrative. And in most cases, there is no renowned surgeon who walks through the door to set things right. So the question is, what can we do? The data is stark. According to a Stanford University study, minority students are often perceived as less academically capable by their teachers, even when they have the same test scores and grades as their white classmates. This is the definition of implicit bias, unconscious attitudes that lead to unequal treatment. The study also highlighted that when teachers have high expectations for all their students, the achievement gap narrows significantly. In other words, belief is a powerful tool. Lucas Hughes experienced the painful side of this in a single morning, and his story reveals the real-world consequences. Children who feel disbelieved or undervalued at school are far more likely to withdraw from class participation. They learn to be quiet, to not share their stories, to doubt their own worth. That is the insidious harm of bias, not just the single act of humiliation, but the gradual silencing of a child's spirit. But Leo's story also offers a powerful counter-narrative that change is possible, that individuals can grow, that institutions can and must do better. Mr. Miller could have become defensive. He could have made excuses. He could have blamed Leo for being overly sensitive. Instead, he did the more difficult work. He confronted his own prejudices. He offered a genuine apology. He fundamentally changed his classroom and his method of teaching. That doesn't undo the harm he caused, but it demonstrates a path toward restoration. Northwood Elementary could have tried to minimize the incident. Instead, they mandated bias training. They updated their policies. They created systems to ensure such an event would not be repeated. That is how real institutional change happens. By acknowledging failure and taking concrete steps to build a better future. And Leo, he could have allowed that traumatic experience to make him smaller, more cautious. Instead, he started a peer support group. He shared his story. He empowered other kids to find and use their voices. That is the essence of resilience. Not pretending the trauma didn't happen, but choosing to use the experience to create something positive for others. So, what is your role in this? First, it begins with asking ourselves tough questions. When a person, especially someone from a different background, shares their story, is our first instinct to believe them or to look for inconsistencies? When a child tells us something that seems extraordinary, do we celebrate their experience, or do we immediately question its validity? When we witness an injustice, do we speak up, or do we remain silent for the sake of comfort? These questions are not easy, but they are essential. Second, we must take action in our own spheres of influence. If you are a parent, start a conversation with your child's school about their policies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ask about their professional development programs for teachers. If you are an educator, take the initiative to examine your own classroom practices. Are all your students receiving the same level of encouragement and benefit of the doubt? Are your assumptions influencing your interactions? If you are simply a person who was moved by this story, share it. Dialogue is the engine of cultural change. The more we discuss these issues openly, the less room there is for them to fester in the dark. And finally, we must teach the children in our lives that their stories matter, that they do not have to diminish themselves to fit into other people's boxes. That standing in one's truth, especially when it is difficult, is an act of profound courage. Dr. Isabella Martinez didn't walk into Northwood Elementary that morning to shame a teacher. She walked in to stand by her son, to show Leo and every other child in that room that truth matters, that they matter. The question that remains is, what will you do with that message? Will you click away from this story and forget it by tomorrow? Or will you allow it to inform how you listen, how you believe, and how you interact with the people in your world? Because this is the fundamental truth that Leo Martinez learned at 11 years old. One person standing in their truth can spark a revolution of change, but only if the rest of us have the courage to listen. If this story resonated with you, do 3 things. 1. Share it. Someone you know needs to hear this message. 2. Leave a comment. Have you ever been disbelieved while telling your truth, or seen someone else's story dismissed? Your experience matters. 3. Subscribe for more stories like this. This channel is dedicated to exploring themes of justice, redemption, and the courage to stand up for what is right. Remember, your truth matters. You matter. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise.